The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of Para-X, its affiliates, or its sponsors.
All these voices. All these voices. All these things you can't explain. All these painful memories. They keep haunting you and daunting me. It's just the ghost of you and me. It's just the smoke and gasoline. It's just the ghost of you and me. Of you and me.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Staring into the Abyss. I am your host, horror author James Hershey Jr., and with me, as always, my co-host, old boy James Ash. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing pretty good. How is everybody tonight?
Tonight's show is going to be fun and interesting and kind of weird, to be honest with you. I came across this article, and I just couldn't believe the headline. I thought, this is nuts. I have to bring this to everybody. You guys got to see this. This is absolutely insane. It comes from popularmechanics.com, and the headline is, uh-oh. Now, right away, you know, if the headline starts with uh-oh, you're in for something. So the headline here is, uh-oh, scientists used human genes to make monkey brains bigger. That can't be good. And it literally says that. That can't be good. So in the headline here we have uh-oh, and that can't be good. It was written by Tim Childers, published November 16th, 2020. So let's get into this. Scientists introduced a human gene, ARHGAP11B, into monkey fetuses. The gene caused an increase in size of the monkey brains, including folding similar to that of human brains. And that's a very important thing, and I'll explain why a little bit later. Basically, it has to do with the fact that our brain developed faster than our skulls did. As we evolved and changed, our brain got larger in size than it was before, a lot faster, and it took longer for our skull to kind of change and get bigger, so the brain didn't have anywhere to go. So essentially what the brain had to do was kind of fold in on itself. That's why the human brain has all the folds where a lot of other species don't. But anyway, back to the article. The study poses some serious ethical questions on genetic engineering. In an experiment that could portend a real-life Planet of the Apes situation, scientists spliced human genes into the fetus of a monkey to substantially increase the size of the primate's brain. And it worked. Researchers from Germany's Max Planck Institute of Molecular Cell Biology and Genetics in Germany and Japan's Central Institute for Experimental Animals introduced a specifically human gene, ARHGAP11B, into the fetus of a common marmoset monkey, causing the enlargement of its brain's neocortex. The scientists report their findings in Science. The neocortex is the newest part of the brain to evolve. It's in the name, neo meaning new, and cortex meaning, well, the bark of a tree. This outer shell makes up more than 75% of the human brain and is responsible for many of the perks and quirks that make us uniquely human, including reasoning and complex language. Not long after our hominid ancestors branched off the evolutionary tree of our current chimpanzee cousins, their brains underwent a rapid expansion, nearly tripling in size over a span of 3 million years. Hominids' brains grew so fast that they became cramped in these slowly evolving craniums, causing the distinct human folding of the neocortex into wrinkles. Scientists believe this was the result of a number of evolutionary factors, but the expression of ARGHAP11B, something unique to hominids, may have given a boost to the brains of our ancestors and close but now extinct relatives, the Neanderthals and the Denisovans. Previous studies have shown that I'm going to just come up with a name for this because I don't want to have to keep saying this long thing over and over again. So we're going to call it ARGAP11B. So ARGAP11B, when unnaturally expressed in mice and ferrets, also caused an enlargement of the neocortex. However, this was the first time the gene was used in a non-human primate and with typical human levels of expression, further suggesting the gene played a key role in our evolution. Now, I have to warn you as we go, this is most likely going to get very sciencey and very heady, but trust me, this is actually extremely easy to understand once you break it down, and I'll do that after the article. But it's going to sound like it's really complex and hard to understand. ARGAP11B arose in our ancestors some 5 million years ago when a happy little accident was made copying the everyday gene, ARGAP11A. In an evolutionary mistake, a single substitution of one nucleotide base, the molecules that encode DNA, with another, led to the loss of 55 nucleotides from ARGAP11B. Like a computer reading an incorrect line of code, the mutation caused the neuron-producing cells of the brain to make more of themselves for longer periods of time, resulting in a larger neocortex. We found indeed that the neocortex of the common marmoset brain was enlarged and the brain surface folded. Michael Hyde, the lead author of the study, said in a press release. Its cortical plate was also thicker than normal, he continued. Furthermore, we could see increased numbers of basal radial glia progenitors in the outer subventricular zone and increased numbers of upper layer neurons, the neuron type that increases in primate evolution. The scientists call these human-monkey hybrids transgenic non-human primates, which may be enough to ring the alarm of any doomsdayer. It certainly raises a lot of ethical questions when doing experiments on primates, let alone when introducing human genes into other animals. For this reason, the researchers limited their study to monkey fetuses, which were taken out by C-section after growing for 100 days. Allowing the experiment to go past the fetal phase and let the human gene-carrying monkeys to be born would be irresponsible and unethical, study co-author Wyland Hutner said in a press release. We confined our analysis to marmoset fetuses because we anticipated that the expression of this human-specific gene would affect the neocortex development in the marmoset, Hutner said. In light of potential unforeseeable consequences with regard to postnatal brain function, we considered it a prerequisite and mandatory from an ethical point of view to first determine the effects of ARGAP11B on the development of fetal marmoset neocortex. And that is the end of this article. Now, there's a couple things in here that I want to talk about. Now, like I said, as the article goes on, it gets real complex as far as them describing how it works and the different parts of the brain that it affects and all that kind of stuff. For the basic understanding of the concept, none of that is important. That's all important if you want to get into specifics on exactly how and why and all that. But that's not really necessary to understand what's going on here. Essentially, ARGAP11B is a mutation of ARGAP11A. And it is a gene that causes the brain to replicate itself, those cells replicate themselves much faster and produce way more. So that's what made our brains get a lot bigger than they used to be, is that particular gene. So what they did was they isolated that gene and they stuck it into a developing fetus for a marmoset monkey. And what happened was the monkey's brain got a lot bigger. And it even showed the signature folding and wrinkling that the human brain has. Now, as I explained earlier, the reason the human brain has that is because the mass of the brain grew much faster than the surface area of the skull. So you didn't have a skull large enough to contain the brain anymore. So what that forced the brain to do is to kind of fold over on itself and make more out of the little bit of space it had, if that makes sense. The reason it's super important that that happened in the monkeys is because that's showing that you had a very large amount of increase in the mass of the monkey brain. Another very important part of this article is when they talk about the parts of the brain that are responsible for reasoning and complex language. Now, this grew substantially in the monkeys as well. And that is important and that is scary. Because, first of all, let's look at a monkey, okay? Now, in this case, it's marmosets, but let's look at chimps, because they mentioned chimpanzees in this article. A chimpanzee is very, very strong. It's like as strong as 6 or 7 human beings. And those things can just rip your arms right off if they want to. There's many cases of them ripping people's faces off when they have them as pets. These things are insanely strong. And they're not even the strongest of the primates. But they're way stronger than we are. So physically, they definitely have the advantage over us in a fight. The only area that we actually would have an advantage over them is our reasoning, our strategy, all of those mental skill sets that enable us to plan and plot and strategize and utilize technology to defeat them. In other words, we can pick up a gun and shoot a damn monkey. That monkey don't know how to use a gun. So it doesn't know that it can kill us with that gun. But in the wild, different types of monkeys do use tools. And I say different because there's many different types of primates that do this. They have started using different rocks as like hammers to bust open nuts and stuff like that. They use sticks as digging tools. So they're starting to figure out already on their own naturally how to make use of tools. So when you jumpstart the brain of a species that is already beginning to figure out how to use tools, and you add to that reasoning and the ability to plan, strategy, it's a perfect storm. I mean, that's a disaster waiting to happen. On top of that, the neocortex is also responsible for your language skills, your vocabulary, your ability to communicate and learn new languages. Now, primates are already capable of learning sign language. So they already have a rudimentary ability to learn language. So here you're also going to be jump-starting that to give them a much more advanced ability to not only understand languages, but form languages of their own. Now, what is language? Language is simply the description of ideas, of thoughts. If you think, when you look at a banana, that banana is yellow. Now, you might think that, but you have to have words to convey that to somebody else. So if you want to say, hey man, that banana over there is yellow, but you don't have the word yellow and you don't have the word banana, how are you going to describe that? You can't. It puts a giant roadblock in your way to be able to effectively communicate with other people. I know that seems silly and rudimentary, and there should be no reason I'm explaining that to you. But it's very important, because when you pair that with strategy and the ability to plan, now you have primates that are much stronger than us, much more vicious than us. And you have given them now the ability to plan, strategize, and reason. All of those things very dangerous. But without a real good language, they really can't communicate it with each other that well in order to come up with a great plan. But then you kickstart and jumpstart their ability to communicate with each other and with us. Once again, perfect storm. Now you have a creature that's stronger than us, that will be able to reason, strategize, and plan like us, and can communicate with each other on an advanced and complicated scale. Not just basic sign language, but complex thoughts. They'll be able to communicate with each other. Now, I don't know what form that communication will take. I don't know if their vocal cords are capable of vocalizing words like ours are. I'm not sure. I don't know. Maybe they can, maybe they can't. But if they've already shown a propensity to be able to handle sign language, basic sign language, then this newfound ability will give them the capacity to learn advanced sign language and to be able to convey complex thoughts and strategies and plans with each other. So in other words, you can have a bunch of these super monkeys. I know they're not a real thing, but I'm going to call them super monkeys because it's fun. You can have a bunch of these super monkeys in a group, strategizing together and planning an attack on whatever. Us, somebody else, an animal, whatever they want to attack. That's dangerous, and that is scary. Now, in this study, he says they were only allowed to get like the first 100 days, and then they were all taken out by C-section and killed. So there are no super monkeys. Yet. I say yet because you know it's just a matter of time. Pandora's box has been opened. Once you prove you can do this, it's only a matter of time before somebody does it and keeps it. That's the problem with these things. It's just like the nuclear bomb. Once we figured out we could make an atomic bomb, we had to make one. It didn't matter anymore whether it was right or wrong, because now we know how to do it. And if we don't do it, somebody's going to do it. And we can't let those people, whoever those people happen to be, have that weapon, and when we don't have it, same thing here. Now that we know how to do this, somebody somewhere is going to do this for whatever reason they do it for. Whether they do it as a weapon, whether they do it just to say, hey, we did it, whatever. Somebody's doing this. So you will have super smart monkeys of some sort. Now, whether they're going to be like these monkeys, or whether they're going to be chimpanzees, or whether they're going to be gorillas, or who knows what they'll do it with. If it works with one species of primate, it'll work with all. And another interesting part of this article that was only a tiny little fraction of it, and it was kind of easy to miss, was they did this with mice too. And it worked for mice. So what that means is this is not just something that'll work on primates, on humans and primates and hominoid type species. It's not just for us. This also worked with mice, which means you have two different types of mammal here. You have a primate and you have the little bitty scurrying rodent mice. So that would lead you to believe that if it works with us and it works with mice, that it might work and very well could work with a whole bunch of other types of mammals as well. So will it work with reptiles? Are their brains too different than ours? I know they're a lot less developed. Could this be something that causes them to develop faster? It's possible. Is this particular gene, RGOP11B, is this particular gene the secret to super smart animals, no matter what kind of animal it is? We know in humans it caused us to develop our brains super fast and become what we are today. Capable of civilization, capable of great works of art, capable of all these amazing things. Will that same phenomena happen with all other species on the planet eventually, once this is introduced to their brains? Because you got to remember, once you do this, those babies will grow up and they will make babies of their own. And once that happens, when their babies are born, they will have this gene in their DNA. So all future generations will have it. And they will all have advanced brains. So could we be looking at a potential world in the future where all animals are as smart as we are? And if that happens, how are we going to maintain control? How are we going to remain at the top of the food chain? We are the least equipped physically to rule. We don't have fangs. We don't have claws. All we have is our brains. Every animal on earth just about can kick our butts in a straight up physical contest. It's our brains that enable us to rule. So what's going to happen when a lion can think like us? Pretty damn scary to think about, isn't it? And that could be where we're headed. Now, you also have the idea here of genetic engineering, of mixing human genes into animal genomes. You could do it in reverse too. If it works one way, it'll work the other. So you could introduce different genes from animals' DNA over to our DNA. You see what I'm saying? You could take, like, say, the chameleon's ability to camouflage itself. Whatever gene is responsible for that, you could find that gene, insert it into the developing fetus of a human child, and potentially that human child might have the ability to camouflage itself like a chameleon. You could find the gene that is responsible for different types of lizards being able to regrow their tail, and introduce that in the proper place in our genome, and maybe we could grow back our arms or legs if they get cut off. There's all kinds of wild ideas you could come up with of different things that could be possible. Now, it also depends on whether the gene is dominant or passive. There's a lot of factors that go into it. And somebody who is much more versed in that than I would have to figure out exactly where to put it and how to put it and all that kind of jazz to make it work. But I'm telling you, I know enough about it to know that that's some scary stuff, to think of what can be done potentially. So that's why I thought this article was scary, and why I also thought this article was very important to talk about. Because on the face of it, when you look at it, it just seems like a fantastic article. You're like, that's crazy, you know? Wow, that's one of those nutso articles, man. I can't believe people are doing that. That's weird. But when you really think about it, this has the potential to change life as we know it. And even maybe knock us down a few links of the chain. You know, we won't be top of the food chain anymore. If you start having these super predators and super badass animals that can destroy us physically, also be able to outthink us, It ain't going to be good for us, guys. I hate to say that, but that's just the truth. So, with that being said, I'm going to throw over to Old Boy and get his opinion on this article and see what he thinks about it. So, go ahead, brother.
Thank you, brother. I really like this one. This was cool because it reminds me of the Planet of the Apes, guys. And this is where I was going to go with this, hearing all this, because they tried to do this a long time. Supposedly, Stalin tried to do this back in Russia. There's a story of making super gorilla soldiers to fight wars. Germany supposedly was trying this stuff. They were trying to do a lot of things. So I'm not surprised about it. I totally believe it because they've been trying to do stuff with baboons and apes and gorillas for a long time. Gorillas can mimic. There was a gorilla that was mimic a person walking on both of his hind legs. Walked exactly like a human did. He mimicked the zookeeper after a while. They learn sign language. They understand things. They're not stupid animals, trust me. If you guys seen what happened with Planet of the Apes, they ended up kicking her ass. And you saw Charlton Heston, you damn dirty apes. You remember that? That was what that movie was. Have you guys ever seen that movie? That's what he said. And that, and at the when he got captured, and that movie was great. It's one of my favorite movies because it shows you how what happened. They ended up if you ever seen the Planet of the Apes movies, I know they made a bunch of remakes. They're all right, but they're not what the original are because Charlton Heston is just awesome. But if you've seen those movies, originally that's what happened. They got smarter and ended up becoming human-like, and then they ended up taking over the world because they beat us. They were just genetically better. Physically better. They got smarter than us too. We gave them, that's what's going to end up happening. It may not even be them. Imagine giving a lion, able to think and talk and walk like us. Physically, that would kill us. We'd be done. Like he said, we can't. We have guns and stuff, but just imagine we would lose what we are. We wouldn't be the top of the food chain anymore. It could happen. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, but I see it coming down the line. Like James says, things are happening. People do whatever they want. You get some rogue scientist that gets paid enough money. He's going to do what he wants. No one's going to stop him. We ain't going to know about it till it's too late. Like Dr. Monroe, you guys, the Isle of Dr. Monroe. I don't know if you guys seen that movie. It was they remade it with Val Kilmer, or I think somebody else was. I think it I forget what the guy's name was. He was I think it's the guy who played in Godfather. I forget his name. But Marlon Brando, I think that's what it was. He played Doctor. That movie was bad. I've seen the original one in the book, but it's about these animals who get. I think they do all these experiments and become like with human genes, and they become like smarter than us. They end up taking over the island, and they were doing a bunch of experiments. It's the same thing. They're making them smart like us or smarter, and that would be a big mistake. Imagine a gorilla that can walk, talk. Like you've seen what happened in the Planet of the Apes, dude. They could jump. We would not be able to beat them in a war unless we have weapons, guns. That's the only way. They would destroy us. We would be the slaves, like that movie. If you guys, that's why I keep going off that movie. You guys need to check that movie out. And actually, I'm glad I said that. I'm probably gonna go pick it up because I know they're selling like all of them, like the original ones. I don't like the newer ones. They're all right, but it is what it is. It wasn't too bad, but I like the original ones because, like I said, I'm a big Charlton Heston fan. I thought he was awesome. I think Gregory Peck's in one of them too. In the last one, I think it is. I think he's in one of them too, but I forget. But those are some of my favorite movies, and it's because it just was a crazy movie. And I know there's a meaning to it back then, but just Charlton Heston in that part, he's just awesome actor as it is. He's been in so many cool movies. He reminds me of like like kind of like Bruce Campbell. He's one of my favorite actors from the Evil Dead series. I know you guys, this is going off subject, but that he's one of my favorites too. But I just like the attitude. And Charlton Heston, you know, when you watch him, he just has this attitude like he don't care, and he's like awesome about it. Like he could just say a line, and it just he has that voice. You know, the Ten Commandments. He was great in that movie, and Ben-Hur. He was in so many great movies. But the Planet of the Apes movie always stuck out to me because it's just, I think it was just so, it was such a weird movie, but it was so true what he's talking about. They can end up being the primal species over us, and and you saw what happened. If you got, that's why I said check those movies out. And tell me what you guys think in the column. What would happen if we ended up doing this kind of stuff? If they ended up getting as smart as us, what would happen? They would get tired of us and take over the world. Yeah, that's my opinion. They would. We don't need these humans anymore. We can make they're obsolete to us. They can't jump like us. They can't think like us. They can't fight like us. We need to take them over. All they do is kill each other. Like if you seen that, all we did was end up blowing up the world. You remember? You know, he says, "Damn you all to hell." Remember, he hits the ground. You did it. You finally did it. You had this big nuclear war, and you know. We destroy everything. That's just how human nature is. Maybe that's what's going to happen to us. Eventually we're going to destroy ourselves, and we, like Dr. Frankenstein, you know, we make the monster and it destroys us, we become obsolete. And that's what I think is going to happen one day. Maybe with robots, maybe with this, you know, maybe we're just going to be obsolete one day. Aliens, they think we're obsolete. If they exist, and I believe they do, they're way 20 times more powerful than we'll ever be. 20 million times, probably. I might be exaggerating. It's probably like 20. But, you know, they can talk without even talking. I think they use a lot of stuff with psychic and I forget how to say that word, where you can talk without moving your lips with your mind telepathically. I think they mastered that. They know how to fly. They know how to defend themselves. And they'll live for thousands of years, and they have. I think they came to this world years ago, thousands of years ago, and they helped show us stuff and teach us stuff. That's just my opinion. I don't care. That's just my opinion. If you don't agree with it, that's your prerogative. But if you guys think, tell us what you guys think. This is an interesting show because it interests me when he was talking about it, because I've watched so many movies about this stuff. You know, what would we do if we gave, you know, animals a mind like us? It would be really bad, probably. Like you were saying, we wouldn't be good. We probably wouldn't do too fair with this. It probably would backfire on us, and we would be in a lot of trouble. And like he said, it would be used as weaponized. They talked about Stalin tried to do this with Russia, and it was undercover a long time ago. He was trying to make an army of killer apes that would, you know, because they were just, if they became like us, they were just stronger, could last long, kill us more. They're 10 times stronger than us. So I could see them doing it. You know, they would do it to make money. It'd be, why would you have a human who has to go to sleep when you have a gorilla that could stay up, you know, a whole 2 days instead of one, that can kill 8 people instead of just one? You just think about it, guys. You know, it's going to be weaponized. We all know that. They will make some kind of army out of it, and you'd have that running around, and eventually they'll turn on their masters. It always happens. It just like that movie, they turned because humans took advantage of them and started abusing them and being cruel to them, and like we do with everything. And it will backfire. It always does. The problem with human beings, they always try to one up on something. They get something, they want more of it, and it's just not enough. And if they can put somebody down, they'll always do it to get somewhere. It's always been like that. And I think that's what will happen, but it would be a big mistake because they'll end up taking us over and we'll be the slaves. And just like that movie, The Planet of the Apes, we'll be in a lot of trouble, guys. So that's my opinion, guys. Tell me what you guys think, but there you go, James.
Old boy brought up the island of Dr. Moreau. And that brings up another very interesting point, another very interesting idea here. And that is what they call human animal chimeras. Now, there are theories out there that this has already been done, that there are scientists that have successfully added animal genes into the human genome and created what they call human animal chimeras. These are creatures that are part human, part something else. And there's actually evidence to support that. There are documents that talk about the CIA being involved in a project that has to do with that, where they were trying to create super soldiers using different genes from different animals. We know that, as old boy said, Stalin, that Russia was involved as well with trying to do that on their side. And we also know that there was a lot of very weird and very similar kind of experimentation going on with the Germans during World War II and with the Japanese during World War II. So this is not completely fantasy. This is something that has been reported to have already happened. Now, where this gets very interesting to me is not in the world of our government's doing this, because you could talk back and forth on that all day long. But to me, what's interesting is to think about, are some of these creatures that were the byproduct of this experimentation, are some of these creatures out there today? Could that explain some of the cryptozoological things that we see and that we get reports of? One that comes to mind is Dogman. Could it be that Dogman is actually a human-animal chimera? Could it be that it is the product of genetic experimentation? That scientists took a human embryo and they inserted genetics from a wolf or a dog of some sort, maybe multiple different types. And what resulted from that is what we call Dogman. Now, there are people that will say yes to that. There are people that will say no to that. But one thing that's interesting when you're talking about Dogman is there are multiple different types of Dogman. With Dogman, you're not simply talking about a standard one-size-fits-all creature. There are multiple different types of these that have been reported. So what that makes me think is if it was the result of experimentation, right? As we go down this little path here, let's just entertain that thought that in this scenario that we're getting ready to talk about, Dogman is the result of genetic experimentation. So if that was true, that would certainly explain why there are different types. Because let's say in type 1, they went straight Timberwolf and human. Type 2, maybe they went German Shepherd and Timberwolf. Type 3, maybe they tried a bunch of different kinds of dogs, maybe like Doberman, German Shepherd, Rottweiler, Pit Bull, trying to make this the most fierce thing they could. Type 4, they went with something else. It would make sense, if that was the case, that you would have different types of creatures as a result. Makes sense. So let's spread that idea from just Dogman to other cryptids. Let's look at Bigfoot. There are a bunch of different types of Bigfoots too. They're called different things in different countries, but also some of the characteristics are different in different countries. The Texas Bigfoot is a lot more aggressive than most of your other Bigfoots. In Florida, the skunk ape is not quite as large as the Bigfoot that you will find in the Pacific Northwest. And they also really, really stink. Now, all Bigfoot have a musky kind of smell to them. They all have a stank to them. But supposedly the skunk ape in the Everglades, which is the Florida Bigfoot, supposedly that smells way worse than any of the others. Up in the area of Nepal, and in there you have what we call the abominable snowman or the Yeti. That is another version of Bigfoot that tends to usually be a whitish color and have much more hair and be larger than the others. So you have multiple different kinds. You also have multiple different behaviors. In Russia, their Bigfoot version over there actually builds structures out of wood and stuff. Fascinating stuff. So they do things that other Bigfoots don't do. So what you have to ask yourself, and I'm not saying Bigfoot is the product of genetic experimentation. Don't get me wrong here. I'm not putting that theory forward as the truth. But what I am saying is, why do you have different behaviors in different areas? Vastly different. Such as, like in Russia, they're actually building structures and stuff out of wood. And why do you have such big differences in appearance and size and all that when the environment isn't all that much different? So in the same country of the United States, I listed 3 separate types of Bigfoot. The standard Bigfoot that you find in the Pacific Northwest, which is what everybody thinks of, 8 to 12 foot tall, Bigfoot. Looks like it's supposed to look. The Texas Bigfoot, not quite as big, but a lot meaner. So its behavior is different and its size is a little bit smaller. The Florida skunk ape is smaller in size also, and it puts off one hell of a bad odor. Why would it be so different in the same basic area? There's not a whole lot of difference between the environments there. Yes, Florida and Texas are hotter than the Pacific Northwest. But it's not like you're talking the North Pole and the middle of the Sahara Desert. It's not that different. It's not like it's separated by entire continents where the environment is vastly different, so they had to develop a completely different way. I don't see where there would be that much difference in the Bigfoot. So with that being said, that makes you think that there's got to be a reason for that. Now, I'm not saying that the reason for that is absolutely genetic manipulation, but it's a possibility. If we know that there were scientists that were mixing animal and human genetics together to create different creatures, we know that is true. That's not conspiracy. That is not the land of make-believe. That is truth that is backed up by documentation. So if we know that is true, then who's to say that some of these things weren't made that way? Now, it only takes a couple to get the whole thing started. And really, in reality, if you're dealing with an existing species like Sasquatch, Because we know Sasquatch existed long before we had the ability to mix genetics. There's legends of Sasquatch going all the way back to the native tribes before we even got to this country. Right? So we know that they go back. So we know that Sasquatch is a separate species of animal that was already here. So let's say you take Sasquatch and you introduce some of the genetics from Sasquatch that you got from hair sample or whatever, right? I'm not entirely convinced that they haven't gotten a body and studied it already, and they just don't tell you about it. The government, I mean. So let's say they take a genetic sample from a Sasquatch, and then they mix that with a human embryo, and maybe they throw in some different things in with it to try to create a super soldier. And let's say their attempts go really, really wrong and they screw up a bunch of times, and most of the animals that they create are killed because they're just weird. But let's say a couple of them were rather successful, and they weren't bad. I mean, they weren't maybe exactly what they were trying to do, but they weren't terrible, so they kept them around. They want to study them or something. And let's say they get out into the wild. Well, if you have an existing species of Sasquatch and then you have a genetically modified Sasquatch, there's no reason that genetically modified Sasquatch couldn't mate with a normal Sasquatch. So then whatever genetics that modified Sasquatch has, some of those are going to get passed on to the offspring. So that could account for some of the differences in the different types over time. Just a theory. Not saying it's true, but I am saying it's interesting. So could that be the case with some of the cryptid creatures that we all talk about all the time? Maybe. Maybe not. Were they ever successful in creating a living creature that survived for more than just a day or two and actually was a successful human-animal chimera? Maybe. The documents that have been declassified talk about the planning to do so and the attempts to do so. Nothing that has been declassified yet talks about whether or not they were successful and whether or not these creations survive today and are used today for anything. We don't have that information. We don't know. But if they were attempting this all the way back in World War II, look at how much further along we are technologically than we were then. If they had started experimenting on all this kind of stuff, trying to do it back then, how far do you think they are now? I just read you an article where they successfully grew a monkey's brain to a larger size and gave it the capabilities that humans have. I literally just read that article to you from Popular Mechanics. That's not National Enquirer. Okay, that's not Weekly World News. That's not a story about Bat Boy flying around or something. That is Popular Mechanics. They successfully did that. So if they are telling you publicly that they're able to do this, what do you think they can actually do that's still classified? That's the question. Because remember, when you're talking aircraft, you're talking 20, 30-year difference in what we know they have and what they actually have. So in other words, the the new stealth technology that they have now that is cutting edge, they've actually had for like 20 years or more. It's just now becoming publicly known that it exists. And it's supposedly brand new. But they had it for a lot longer. That's the way it works. So what are they actually able to do now that's still classified material? And what are they admitting to? Because whatever they're admitting to, believe they can do a lot more than that. If the government's involved, and we know that they were, that means that whatever they're doing now that they're admitting to, they've been able to do that for a long, long time. And they are light years past that at this point. You just don't know about it yet. So to me, that is why I think this article is scary as hell. Because if they're admitting to this, imagine what they're actually doing now. Hell, we might already have super monkeys that are smarter than we are. We just don't know about it. And that, my friends, should scare the ever-loving hell out of all of you. So let me know down in the comments what you thought of this episode and what you think of that idea. Because to me, it's rather frightening. And with that being said, I'm going to throw back over to Old Boy and get his final sum up and shout outs.
Thank you, brother. I hope you guys really enjoyed this episode. I did. I thought it was really cool. It was always interesting to me, especially I love the sci-fi part of it, and I love the movies, and I believe it probably happened and probably is happening now, and it will happen one day. I won't be surprised. So I hope you guys enjoyed the show on Parax Radio. I hope you guys catch us every Sunday on Parax Radio, guys, and thank you for listening to us, our fans, for listening to us on Parax Radio and YouTube and Facebook. I hope you guys really enjoyed this one. It was really different. You guys want to subscribe, go to James Hershey's YouTube page and subscribe. James Hershey Jr. He won't be hard to find. You guys want any merchandise? We sell shirts, covert masks, blankets, all kinds of cool stuff. You guys want to know where it's at? Just check it out. He'll tell you where to go after I'm done blabbling on. I hope you guys next week, it's going to be Thanksgiving. I hope you guys have a good holiday. I hope you guys have a great time with your families. I know with COVID going on, it's going to be hard to because I don't want so many people together. But if you do, just have a couple people over. I'm not suggesting it, but just saying if you do, enjoy your time next week. And I love you guys. Misfits, Sugar Ladies, Monster Lovers, and Demon Hunters. I love you and blessed be and have a great night.
The YouTube channel is youtube.com/James Hershey Jr. That's where all the episodes of Staring end up. That's where all the episodes of Tales are. There's gameplay videos. I do the paranormal news there. All kinds of cool stuff. 100% free. Hell of a lot of fun. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of videos there for you to enjoy. So have at her. The merchandise store is teespring.com/stores/staring into the abyss. That's where all the merch is. There's a bunch of different designs. There's shirts and hoodies and posters and pillows and etc. There's just all kinds of stuff there. A whole bunch of really cool horror themed and paranormal themed designs. Very cool stuff. Decent prices, really good quality. If you want to support the show, that's a great way to do so. Thank y'all for watching this on YouTube. Thank y'all for listening on Parax Radio. And thank you to everybody listening on all the different affiliates and all that kind of stuff. I don't try to list everybody because I always forget, and I'll mess it all up. And I don't want to leave anybody out. So thank y'all, wherever you're listening or however you're listening, thank you for listening. I appreciate you. And let me know, like I said, down in the comments, what you guys think about this one, because this is a really interesting idea. And it's a real frightening idea, to be honest with you. As Old Boy said, Thanksgiving's coming up, man. It's one of my favorite holidays, not just because I was born on Thanksgiving, but also because I like to eat, man. I love Thanksgiving dinner. It's like the best thing ever. And I've already, I'm going to tell you something that I don't tell many people. I figure, it's safe between just, me and you and however many people are listening, a million or whatever people that listen to this. I've already had my first Thanksgiving dinner of this year. I had it today. I had the turkey and the stuffing and the ham and the green beans and the sweet potatoes, the whole nine, man. And it was absolutely delicious. And that's one thing I love. Like down here in the South where I am, in the mountains of Virginia, we have all these little places, right? Like every place has restaurants, but we have a lot of little catering companies, is what they call themselves. But essentially, what it is a bunch of old women that cook amazing food, and they'll have like little dinners where you can go down to the VFW or you can go down to, the building and you can get a dinner and take home if you want. And so around this time of year, a lot of these little places will start doing their Thanksgiving dinners, but they don't want to all do Thanksgiving dinner on Thanksgiving because most people cook their own damn Thanksgiving dinner. And they also don't want to do it all on the same day because then they are in competition with each other. So what you get is a staggering for a couple weeks leading up to Thanksgiving of really awesome Thanksgiving dinners. So me being the kind of person I am, I take advantage of that fact. And so I will have many, many Thanksgiving dinners in between now and then. And I'm going to enjoy the hell out of them. So I hope that you also can enjoy the hell out of as many Thanksgiving dinners as you can get away with eating. And depending on what state you live in, maybe you can only have 3 people, 5 people, 7, whatever. I don't give a damn. Have as many people as you want, man. Life is short. You only live once. So the way I look at it, who the hell is anybody to tell you what you can do in your own house, right? Screw them. Do whatever the hell you want. Have a great Thanksgiving. That's the bottom line, and enjoy the dinner. Thank you all for listening. Thank you all for all the support. I love you guys, and I will catch you on the next one. Until we speak to you again, love many, trust few, and do harm to none. God loves you, and so do I. Bye-bye.